welcome back to Lessons Learned. I'm Sherry, and today we're going to talk about prepackaged binding, prepackaged bias binding. I have two examples here. There are many types or widths or different applications that you would use this Wright's brand tape. There's hem tape, there's different widths of these, but these are the two that I would guess that most of us as quilters and crafters would pick up. I have a bias tape extra wide double fold, which is 1/2 inch finished, and a double fold bias tape quilt binding, which is 7/8 of an inch wide finished. So here's what it is. This one here, the bias tape extra wide double fold, is, hope you can see this. This dark color is not the best choice for demonstration, but you can see how there's it's probably about 1 3/4 wide if you opened it up single, and then it has a fold right down the center. But first you have your two sides that fold in, and then there's a little space here, which is where the bulk of your project, the thickness of your project will lay, and then this will encapsulate the edge, the raw edge of your project. Here's another example. It's this double fold bias tape quilt binding. Same concept, it's just wider. And there again you see the same fold pattern and the little space there that your thickness of your project would lay into, and it would finish off the edge of your quilt. This wide one, I would only use that for quilts. This size you can use for all your other craft projects like pot holders, trivets, placemats, maybe the cuff part of an oven mitt, those sorts of things. This type of binding can also be used in clothing applications, like to encapsulate a raw edge for a hem, or maybe the hem of a sleeve, or there's other ways you can use this. But for us, this is probably what we would normally pick up if we were going to use pre-packaged binding. So that's what it's used for. So now we'll get into the why would we use it. So why would we use bias binding? Well, when something is on the bias, we get a little more strength, and sometimes in articles of decor that we actually use, like a pot holder, it's going to get washed a lot. And as you can see with this quilt binding here, I'm just going to show you this one because it's bigger, but you can actually see that it's on the bias. You can see the weave going this way and this way. So when that gets sewn onto your project, this is the part, this outer folded edge is what's going to get most of the wear. So with bias binding, you're going to have fibers that are going this way and that way. Whereas if you just do it on the straight, you're only going to have 1 or 2 threads here, and after a lot of use and washings, it's just going to start to fray out. So this will extend the life of your projects if they are something that gets washed and used a lot. So that's a good why. Another why is you've got some and you want to do something quick. You don't want to make your own binding. Pull these out and you're good to go. Now if you have to go to the store and buy it, it's probably not that great of a time saver. So, you know, just go ahead and make your binding like you normally would and put it on. And as a side note also, if you want to make some bias binding, you need at least 3/8 of a yard to get a significant amount of binding for a small project. So all you have to do is just take that 3/8 of a yard and put your 45 angle part of your ruler down on it and start cutting at the width that you want, and you've got bias binding by doing that. You can do it yourself. It could be that I don't know, you couldn't find the color that you wanted to use, and maybe your bias binding was the right color. It's a quick way to just pull something out and attach it. So that might be some of the whys as to why you would want to use prepackaged binding. It is a little bit pricey. These, for example, are $2.99, and the quilt binding is $3.99 at Joann's. They're frequently on sale, or you can have a coupon. I happen to get mine close to Black Friday, and it's 3 packages. Buy 3 packages, get 3 free. So I got them for $1.33 and $1. So that wasn't too bad. I don't normally buy prepackaged binding like this, but I have used it in the past. And like I said, I find it in my stash sometimes, so might as well get it out and use it for some of these smaller projects. So now I'm going to show you how to put the binding on. Okay, so I have this large, I'm calling it a trivet because I want it to be used as, you know, like a giant pot holder for a pan, like a 13x9 pan. So I've got my fabric all prepared. I have some batting in here and some Insole Bright, and maybe in a future video I will show you how to use Insole Bright and other heat resistant products for projects specifically of this type: pot holders, oven mitts, placemats, and trivets. So I have my quilting on here already. It's reversible, so I have 2 fabrics that coordinate, and I did all my quilting. And then to get my rounded edges, which is another why as far as why you want to use bias binding, is bias binding is very flexible. You've got lots more flex to get around a corner. Whereas normally we use our straight bindings, we can't do that with a straight binding, at least not very easily. So that is another why as far as why to use this. Another step is just a little tip I want to tell you too. You can use to get these rounded corners, if you want to do that, you can use a cup, a saucer, a plate. I used a roll of painter's tape that I had in here that I use for straight quilting. And so I just put my roll of tape there and just marked with a pencil where I needed to clip, and I just took my scissors by hand and cut that. So another tip that's very helpful in doing this, because it is a little fidgety to put this on, is to run a basting stitch, just a long stitch on your sewing machine all around your edges, about 1/8 of an inch in. And that way you're not dealing with a lot of bulky fabric as you're trying to get around your project. So first of all, let's open this up. This is why it's called double fold. Okay, there's your 1/2 inch finished. So if you open it up, and I apologize that this is dark, I should have gotten a lighter color, but you have 2 ends that are folded into the center. So just like when you make your binding, you know, you make your piece. This is about 2 inches. I don't think it's 2 inches. It's about 1 3/4 inches. You fold it in half, and then you fold it in half again, and sometimes you're asked to fold it in towards that fold. So that's how it comes. Let me show you the quilt one. It might be a little bit easier to see. Here it is, and it's bigger as well. So this is probably 3.5 inches wide. It's folded in half first and pressed, and then the ends are folded inward towards that. There is some room there, which allows the thickness of your project to fit into that. Now I won't be using this on here, although that is a beautiful color to put on this particular one, but this is more for your quilt, full quilt size projects. It's not going to look near as nice on a small project like this. So what we're going to do is take and open this, and then your first fold, and you will be looking at the front side of your project. You will lay the outside to the edge of your project. And you can use pins or clips, whichever you prefer to use. And you're going to want to get it going all around your project first. You don't want to go around through here and then, you know, just kind of be randomly placing it off of a roll. But you want to get it while you're sewing, that is. So you want to get enough off of your roll or your card here to fit all the way around before you start sewing. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I will be back here to start the sewing process. And one more detail about this folded bias binding is supposedly one side is folded just short of the other side. I don't know if you can see that little bit of margin there. On the wide quilt binding, you can see it. But on my pieces of blue, I could not determine that there was a short width side and then a wider side on it. But if you can detect a less wide side, like it's folded just short of the other edge, then your short side is to go on your front. So you sew that down first, and then you'll have more fabric to turn to the other side. I'm just not seeing it on this dark blue one at all. But I do know for a fact that that's the way it's supposed to be. But like I say, on the quilted one, you can definitely see. So this would be the part that you sew to the front of your project. And then this part would go around to the back. Okay, here's how you do it. I've got my binding all clipped down all the way around. And these clips are great because they're just the width of up to that first fold, which is what we're going to be sewing into. We're going to sew in that first fold. Now I have my end turned over to finish this edge because we don't want raw edges. You're not going to be doing the thing where, you know, you leave 12 inches of room and all these tails of binding so that you can do your 45 and all that. It's just not necessary for something this small. So I have it pinned down in place. I have it turned over approximately a ½ inch. And what's going to happen is when we get all the way around to the other side, and I have my other tail over here just pinned out of place. It's not pinned in place where it's going to be sewn down. I've just got it pinned out of my way for now. It's going to go inside this, so we don't have to do anything with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put my presser foot down right inside my crease where my clips are. I'm going to go ahead and pull this pin out so I don't run over it. And I'm using a light thread just so that you can see what I'm doing. I normally would use a dark thread on this. So just use your normal stitch that you normally use. Maybe two, let's do 2. You can just certainly do 1.8 or whatever. I'm on my Janome machine, which is computerized, so fortunately I have a speed control. So I'm going to take my speed way down because you're going to want to go really slow on this. You don't want to zip around this because this is binding or bias binding. Lots of stretch, and you just don't want to be yanking and pulling and going down through there really fast. You just want to take your time and do it. So I'm going to go ahead and let my needle down. I'm going to move this a little bit so that I can backstitch just a couple of times. And then you can certainly find a place on your throat here to go by, but it's best just to follow that fold right there. Just take your needle right down into that fold. I'm going nice and slow. And then when I get up here to the corner, I'm going to show you how to do that. Here we go. I'm sure hoping you're able to see this well. Tried to get the camera as close as I could, and hopefully it's not being blurry. Okay, so now we're approaching our curve. Now here's where your stretch is really going to be important. You don't want any pleating in that ditch that you're sewing in, and you want to keep your binding all the way to your curved edge. So with that in mind, you can actually pull apart to see your edge really well. Now see, I'm starting to get a little pleat, and it might be okay down here, but I'm going to make sure by lifting my foot that that's not going to get sewn in. Time to take another clip out, and then you can just kind of maneuver this over, trying to stay in your little folded ditch there. Okay, now here we're getting into some pleating again, so we want to make sure that that gets pulled out. Take this out. There, we're getting nice and flat again. And you can go way down on your speed and just do this. I recommend it, because it's better to get it right in the first place than to try to go back and fix it. That's a rule to live by, isn't it? Okay, so now I can move my speed up a little bit again. Maybe a little bit more. And on these straightaways, you can kind of take off. Just make sure your binding is right on that edge, and you're sewing right down in that ditch. So I'm going to keep going, and I'll stop again at the next corner and see how it goes. Okay, here we are at the corner again. I'm going to take my speed down to turtle speed, just following my ditch there, my little fold, making sure my edges are still together on the outside, and just kind of pull at this, your left hand, just kind of pull slightly as you guide yourself through that little curve. Now I see a little pleat here. I'm going to lift up and make sure I'm not going to sew that like that. Don't want that. Okay. Now, see, we can kind of adjust again. It's really worth it to go slow. Okay, now we can go fast again. Okay, so here we are at our tails. So I'm just gonna open this up. I chose to pink my edges to take out some of the fullness in this piece right here, because it's gonna go just slightly beyond my beginning that I have turned over. So that's double fabric, and then, you know, we're going to be doing this number going all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut my thread tails off here just to get them out of my way so that they don't cause a problem. And then just lay this down flat and sew down in that ditch. Guess I could go a little bit faster now that I've passed the corner. Okay. So there we go. So you can do a little lock stitch if you want. And there's that. So that's all going to fold over nice. Okay, so now what? We've got it all on and ready to go. So we can just kind of, you've got your next fold, which is the center fold, and you just kind of wrap that over. And then you've got your other folded edge on your back side now. See that? So here's what it's going to look like. Just kind of fold that over. And look how nice those corners look. Isn't that gorgeous? Very nice. This is the one reason that I feel would be a good reason to use bias binding and or prepackaged bias binding, to be able to manipulate those corners into a nice curved corner. Now you might ask, can you use this bias binding on square projects? Yes, you can. And you do it the same way as you do with your regular. You sew it up just like I showed you. You stop 1/4 of an inch or the width of the sewing that you've been doing. You stop short of it and then do your same little fold over technique that you do with it open. And then when you turn it over, you will have a mitered corner. So yes, you can do that. I wouldn't. I mean, it's just too much trouble, I think. So here is my little edge that I have that will go inside on the back. So there's my little edge. You can just kind of manipulate that a little bit and get that neatened up there where your two ends meet. But as you can see, it's going together nice. Now you're going to have a little bit of cupping. And what I mean by that is it does want to draw in towards the corners there, but you can fix that with some nice ironing and starching, and there you go. Now from here, first of all, I'll get this tail straightened up. Like I said, the next step would be to hand sew the back. You can just whip stitch the back. If you wanted to, you could carefully, very carefully, clip all this down enough that if you sewed here in this ditch, that it would catch on the back. And I'll just be perfectly honest with you, I've never had success doing that. But if you think you can manage it, you do kind of have to pull that over a little more, because you know you're going to lose some of your 1/2 inch on the front, but you'll have a full 1/2 inch on the back, and then you'll catch the very edge of that. Very difficult to do, I will admit. It can be done. And if you're so inclined to do that, then do that. But I think I'm going to sew mine down by hand, and when I get done, I'll show you. Okay, so to do your hand sewing, all you need to do is get a needle and thread, of course, to a color of thread that's not going to show. I'm using navy in this case. And you just grab that little stitch that you sewed from the front. You remember when you were sewing in that little indentation in your binding? And so that shows up on the back side. So just grab one of those little stitch areas there and just go just a teeny tiny bit outside of it, and then that'll pull that stitch line up under your binding and you will never see it. And so as you move around to the edges, the corners here, the rounded corners, you can see that you've got a little bit of fullness from that turning that corner, but you can just kind of ease that in as you're making your stitches. So I hope you can see that. I don't think you can, but you get the idea. And you'll notice I'm not using a thimble. I just don't do enough hand sewing to get adept at using a thimble. And yes, I have used all different types. Occasionally I will give it another try, but it seems like just getting a few little needle holes in my finger is not going to hurt me, so I'm just gonna do it the way that I can do it, the most dexterous way. So this is what's going on right now. It doesn't take long to get around a pot holder or even a trivet of this size, so I think it's much more worth it to do the hand sewing. Alright, so here is my finished trivet. It's all done. Got all my nice curved edges. Got my little connection there. There's the other side. You can make these in all different sizes, whatever you need to make. And just get some prepackaged binding. And make yourself some pot holders, trivets, placemats, whatever the case may be. Okay, have fun.